Hey folks, there has been a lot of crazy shit going on since the year started, and we're not even a whole 60 days into the current year. But before we get into any of that, I want to tell you guys about something unusual that happened recently. 2 weeks ago, I got to experience one of the coolest things to me. I'm just sitting around, watching a Sargon stream with Jeff Holiday and Dr. Layman, and then all of a sudden I hear this voice.
Yeah, he was really great too.
Honestly, right, I really hope that a gang of people go down there and just chant "Normies get out, Reed."
Hello.
Is that the real Total Biscuit?
That's the real Total Biscuit here.
Oh my god!
Holy shit. How amazing was it to not only see JonTron and Sargon stream for 5 glorious hours, but to also hear him freely voice his opinions on politics. As it turns out, JonTron is hashtag woke, as they say, and is just as fed up with this SJW feminist regressive left bullshit as you or I might be. Arguably more so, considering that he has more to worry about from their tactics than your average person would. Now, before all of this social justice nonsense, learning someone like John's political views would have been a mundane experience, and I'm sure that for a lot of people who are fed up with hearing about politics in general, it still is. But in a society where someone like Angry Video Game Nerd can be labeled as a sexist for refusing to review the new Ghostbusters film because it looks like yet another corporate cash grab remake, coming out and airing your political grievances when they deviate from the established narratives may as well be career suicide.
I can't live in this world anymore! It's over for me!
So, as I'm sure you could expect, the political dissent mob wasted absolutely no time trying to slander JonTron on Twitter, even before the stream ended. And needless to say, JonTron's YouTube channel has tanked from the massive number of... Oh.
If you can't beat him, join.
More important than the ineffective smear campaign on Twitter is what's going on within the context of it. You see, 6 days earlier, a very prominent white nationalist by the name of Richard Spencer was infamously punched in the face while doing an interview during Donald Trump's inauguration. And apparently it was totally okay because he was a Nazi. Now, I'm sure you're probably sick of hearing people talk about this since it's been the hot topic issue for the past 2 weeks, but it is obviously not okay to assault people for their political opinions, even if they are Nazis. And you would think that by now everyone knows that political violence for any reason is not okay, but apparently if they think wrong enough, then fuck them, anything goes. Or at least that's what they seem to think over at The Independent. Some people see poetry in motion in a bird taking flight across the wide open sea, or a tree dancing in the wind. I see it in the clip of white nationalist Richard B. Spencer being sucker punched in the face by an anarchist. Why does everyone sound like they just jerked off to Richard Spencer getting punched? I mean, seriously, do you have to romanticize this shit because it wasn't the slightest bit impressive? In a moment of Fibonacci perfection, a member of the J20 Black Bloc emerges from the lower left-hand side of a shot of Spencer talking to a camera about his Pepe the Frog lapel pin, the anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic, and anti-feminist cartoon mascot of the alt-right. His right arm arches upward across the frame towards Spencer's face, and with the full weight of his body behind his clenched fist, he lands the meanest hook onto his victim's jaw. Fibonacci perfection. Holy shit. This is how you know this person has never even been in the same room where a fight was being shown on TV. Noodle Arms McGee over here was actually so incapable that he managed to stop dead to actually hit Spencer, completely destroying the tiny bit of momentum his paperweight frame had built up to that point. You know, it is amazing to me that this Antifa sympathizer thought it would be a good idea to submit an article to be published where she is explicitly supporting and condoning criminal activity. But even more than that, I'm shocked, even though I probably shouldn't be, that no one looked at this and said, hey, you know we can't publish this, right? It makes it look like The Independent condones political violence. Unsurprisingly, someone did eventually realize this mistake and took the article down before they managed to seriously impugn themselves legally. And I find it interesting that she brought up anti-feminism. I've seen a lot of Pepes, but I've never seen anything that would specifically link Pepe itself to anti-feminism, so I don't know where that came from. But you know what? This is actually good, because that's the next thing I want to talk about. We've heard from a Black Bloc sympathizer over at The Independent, but what do our favorite gang of YouTube feminists have to say about this whole matter? I'm sure that these tolerant individuals will speak out in condemnation at an action that undermines the very fabric of a democratic society, won't they?
Whilst, yeah, I don't think casual, random acts of violence against average people is fine. Like, obviously that's illegal and should be illegal. But I think a point that Christy sort of alluded to there, that this for me is anti-fascist, not just self-defense, but defense of your fellow countrymen, women, and non-binary folk. Because these people don't mean to, as you say, it's not about whether it's lower taxes or a slightly larger military or a slightly larger social safety net or whatever. That is a fascist piece of shit that means harm to people, to innocent people. And so if occasionally you have to clump one of them around the fucking head to make them know that they're not going to be unopposed, frankly, not only am I not going to lose any sleep over it, I put it on my fucking channel. Because I think it needs to be shown to the world that these people are not going to be unopposed.
Wow. And I thought that the Independent article was bad for glorifying this. Kevin, what do you mean if these people need to be occasionally clunked in the head? Spencer wasn't doing anything other than talking about his stupid Pepe pin and wearing a really douchey haircut. Yet here you are, talking as though he's been the aggressor in some way that would make him deserving of being attacked. Then you go on about how these people need to be shown that they won't be unopposed, and that it should even be broadcast to the world. I'll tell you this, the way you frame this sounds like punching people is perfectly okay as long as you can virtue signal while doing it. And what's funny is that what you've just described in any other context would just be called fascism. Because what you've just described, through your exact wording, is that in your mind, sometimes we need to make an example out of Nazis by assaulting them in the street for being Nazis. Now Kevin, what I want to impress upon you is that you know that this is wrong. Thanks to another quote from you, later on in this stream, you exemplify why this actually is an issue. And I'm going to play this for you right now because you don't seem to understand how it applies to what you've just said.
To misquote JFK, those that make peace impossible make violence inevitable. And I think they make violence inevitable.
When you take these people who are currently doing nothing and you assault them, you are the one who is making peace impossible. You are making violence inevitable. And you are the one who will cause them to have to resort to some sort of violent action because they cannot just peacefully coexist within a society. You, through this thought, will be the very person who causes the breakdown of our decorum to the point where we result in just a civil war. And I hope you understand that. But I know you are going to reject that idea. You're going to reject the notion that assaulting people who may hold idiotic ideologies causes them to respond with violence, even though historically that has always been the case. Honestly, I could go on and on for fucking hours about what Kevin says in this stream alone, but there's so much more to look at, so we're just going to quickly go through the next 2 points. Let's go ahead and shift our attention to anti-feminism. How do these people see their primary opposition?
Am I required then to extend my empathy to people who spout hate and who basically do verbally, physical, sort of assaulting people verbally and incite others to perhaps engage in violent acts? No, I have no moral obligation. I have a moral obligation to stand up to violence or to oppose violence as a form of political solution, right? Because I wouldn't want that done to me. But I have no doubt that if someone made a video where I got punched in the face, there was not a single anti-feminist on YouTube who would not be laughing their ass off and extending me no empathy whatsoever. So I have no moral obligation to defend, to empathize with that person, and to cry for him, as Steve said, or to make an hour-long video on that one issue. You know what? Because they haven't earned my empathy.
Seriously. And she wonders why people have made a sport out of being a dick to her in YouTube comments. This statement of hers is what really made me want to respond to this stream in the first place. You see, the difference between Christy and us, or at least Christy and myself, is that I don't hate her because she's a feminist. I might say that I hate some of the ideas she has, and definitely some of the things she says, but in general, I wouldn't give a shit what she had to say about anything if I hated her, or if I thought that she was beneath me or something like that. Sure, she's a bit pompous, but this is someone who is a wife and a mother and a fellow human being. And just like with Spencer, I don't want to see anyone use any kind of violence against Christy unless she's been assaulting someone in the first place. There is nothing satisfying about that, and there would be nothing funny about it either. And this actually brings me to something interesting about this stream. Chrisiosity is the person through this hour-and-a-half long expose that I found to be the absolute least contemptuous. I find myself liking her the most in general because she is one of the feminists I've seen be the absolute most willing to hold conversations with anti-feminists and just treat us like people rather than some kind of monster. And I really wish she hadn't even been part of this stream, but I'm glad she was, so I can show you the statement she made.
when you start taking groups of people, just whole groups of people, and acting like they're not equally human, that there's nowhere that leads but violence, death, suffering, and pain. They are the worst ideas that we've ever had. We keep having them. We need to stop having them, and we need to stop acting like they're just, a run-of-the-mill opinion that one might have.
What Chrisiosity just said, in general, is absolutely correct. When you start dehumanizing people, it doesn't lead to anything good, and this is a person who realizes this completely. She is the only one in this stream who managed to keep a level head on their shoulders, which is why it really, really pissed me off when she sat there silent as Steve Shives completely walks all over this point she made.
It's not a matter of disagreement. I think white people are genetically superior, and I'm totally okay with subjugating or maybe even wiping out people of color. Like, those are the ideologies that Richard Spencer pushes. Those are the kinds of things that he publishes in his newsletters and on his websites. That's who he is. If somebody had run him over with a lawnmower, I wouldn't have cared, because he's a piece of shit. And while I do not recommend violence against people, if shitty things happen to shitty people, you know what I usually say? Well, good, fuck him.
What is there to even say about this? Steve just doesn't give a shit about this person, someone who is his fellow American. Steve, you're a piece of shit. Look, I don't give a shit if someone who was in the KKK back in the 40s got murdered with a lawnmower. I wouldn't be celebrating the fact that another human being got shredded like a block of cheese. You fucking sociopath. And from here comes the biggest thing I wanted to focus on. Steve, what do you think of anti-feminists, or the people you call anti-feminists?
I think a lot of people on what I guess we could call the other side of this, the sort of anti-feminist, anti-social justice, pro-Nazi, which I think we have to say now, pro-Nazi side, or at least a Nazi water-carrying, Nazi apologist side. The people who are just so broke up about seeing a Nazi get punched. There's a vibe among a lot of them that this is all just like a game. They're just doing this for fun. And when they push these toxic viewpoints to their audiences, it's just for fun. They're just doing it for the views. They're just doing it, it's just a game, and their followers pick this up.
No, Steve, it's not that it's just a game. It's that we treat you like you're just another person who we happen to disagree with. Steve, you don't know what we say or what we believe because you don't listen to us. So I don't know how it is you think that you can say that our views are toxic when you don't know them. But hey, we disagree with you, so just fuck us. You can call us Nazis if you want to. Who cares? We're just toxic misogynists.
And I think a lot of them don't seem to understand that I genuinely don't like them. You know what I mean? Like when they attack my friends, when they attack my family, when they attack the basis of the society that I live in, and then they act like, oh, what's your problem? We just want to. Why won't you debate with us? Why won't you have a conversation with us? I think you're garbage.
Steve, your entire career on YouTube is nothing but you attacking the basis of Western society in the name of your shitty ideology. What you are saying here is that we are garbage since we have the nerve to take offense to your bullshit ideology trying to vilify the society we live in, yourself included. You don't know what anti-feminists believe, you don't know what our criticisms of you and your ideology are, and I know you don't because you don't care. All you do is sit on your high horse and throw stones down at people while refusing to listen to anyone who won't just sit there and take it. And the fact that your block list is so big that even PewDiePie is blocked by you is a testament to how deep the well of your bullshit goes. The thing about how Steve Shives acts in this stream, and I mean the very words escaping his mouth, is that he is eerily close to one of Hitler's speeches from 1920. It's almost to the point where I can literally envision how the people of Nazi Germany became complicit with Hitler's final solution. What I'm going to do is play a particular section of Steve talking, and we're going to compare it to a select portion of that speech.
The whole notion that we should just be arguing people out of their fascism or their white supremacy or their white nationalism, that we should just be having conversations about this, and that's the way we defeat them. People, I guess, have forgotten the Ku Klux Klan in the United States was not crushed by people arguing Klansmen out of their white supremacy. It was crushed because the Southern Poverty Law Center sued the largest Klan organization and took everything they had. That's what smashed the Klan. And that wasn't violent. And it's good that it wasn't violent, but it was opposition. It wasn't just, let's sit down at a table and discuss our differences. It was, these people are doing something awful and violent and destructive to our society, and we're going to use the tools at our disposal to deprive them of their ability to operate.
Okay, full disclosure. I changed the word Jewish to white supremacist and the word racial to racist. But even taking that into consideration, the general sentiment expressed is still the same. So, congratulations, Steve. You have become such a fucking ideologue that you are actually mirroring Hitler 97 years after the fact. This is why social justice and feminism and all the other regressive left bullshit is the cancer of the left, and it needs to be purged. So, what does all of this have to do with JonTron and his situation? I didn't expand on it earlier, but JonTron's hate mob specifically single him out as being a Nazi. Which is complete bullshit because nothing he said in that stream would give anyone the impression that he was a Nazi. But fuck JonTron. He disagreed with a bunch of snowflakes on political issues. Just call him a Nazi enough times and it's true, right? Isn't that how it works? Because who fucking cares about Nazis? It doesn't matter if this one hasn't done anything noteworthy or just spends his time debating feminists on YouTube. Fuck those guys. Punch them and run them over with a lawnmower. This habit the left has of name-calling needs to stop. Specifically when it's done to people whose views don't fit the label you've given them. Don't call anti-feminists misogynistic, transphobic, or homophobic because the majority of us aren't any of those things. And stop calling Donald Trump a fascist or a Nazi or a white supremacist because when you do that, you just make yourselves look like a bunch of spoiled crybabies. And that attitude is how the man won in the first place. If the left is allowed to keep doing this, there's only one place it leads. And the sad part is, we've seen the dangers of this habit so recently that everyone on the left in particular should remember it well enough to know not to do it.
Robert Deere, who's the Planned Parenthood terrorist, admitted that he's guilty in court on Wednesday. He said, quote, "I'm guilty. There will be no trial. I'm a warrior for the babies." Oh boy, I wonder what his motive is. He also blurted out, "Protect the babies." Again, I wonder what his motive is. So he took that to heart, and he believed it, and he acted on it. And, of course, when he was arrested, he also now infamously said, "No more baby parts," as they were bringing him to jail. And bottom line is, somewhere along the line, he was brainwashed, and he believed what his preacher or his pastor was telling him about the issue of abortion, or he believed family members or right-wing commentators who often talk about how it's a genocide, or like Bill O'Reilly said, the Democrats voted for infanticide. Totally made up, totally not true, but you say it, and some crazy people might believe it, and they might act on it.
Carly Fiorina, who said falsely that Planned Parenthood was guilty of harvesting a live baby's organs. So is it this kind of rhetoric that's fueling these mentally unbalanced people to act?
It was the rhetoric. Chris, it has to be the rhetoric that drove the guy who was engaging in animal torture to commit this act. But is this not an evidence of the bias in some of these reporters who are on the pro-choice side and think any expression of the anti-abortion, the pro-life stance, is angry rhetoric? If you use the term baby killers, which the pro-life people believe abortion is, that's the hateful rhetoric they want to shut down. That's the hateful rhetoric they want to pin this crime on.
I love that. So any expression is hateful. You know, any expression like they're killing millions of babies and you should stop them.
What, there's something wrong with that?
There's something wrong. No, here's the rhetoric. I personally don't like abortion. You can say that.
Yes.
You're allowed to say that. If Megyn Kelly said that at the beginning of every show, I would think that was totally reasonable. But when you go on every show, night after night, they are baby killers. They are chopping up babies. They're selling babies. And Carla Fiorina, by the way, for some reason Megyn Kelly didn't feel the need to say this, was actually lying. That was a miscarriage baby that was in those heavily edited tapes. When you say those sorts of things, when you say that they are murdering millions of babies, that's the sort of rhetoric that is hateful that we have a problem with.
Say it again. Say it to my fucking face.